hello, everybody, and welcome to Grimwit with Dimwits. I'm T.
And I'm Blondie. Hi.
Well, hi, Blondie. Are you just talking to me or everybody?
I never talk to you. It's everybody.
I know. You're so over it. This is our last episode of and there's a tear coming down my eye right now.
I wasn't going to say anything.
I know. You were hoping I'd forget.
I was hoping.
Of our Spookterfest special.
My last sigh.
It's been so much fun.
It's been so long.
I know there was 5 Mondays this month, so you actually had to endure an extra show of Spookterfest.
Get it out now, because the next episode, I'm cutting you off.
You're like, no more. Well, I had a really weird thing happen to me. I don't think I told you about this.
You did?
Yes, I did.
More weird than normal?
Yeah, a little different. So Blondie and I got a work phone that I actually have with me all the time. And so I've only had it since we started this podcast. And I received a message from somebody. It's a new number. And I'm going to read the messages because the whole thing was just bizarre. It says, "Hi, Jean. I have tried calling you, but your voicemails have not been set up. I am hoping you're able to see my text. This is blah, blah, blah." I'm not going to say the name. I let it go for a few days and I didn't say anything. But then I also received another message from someone else, pretty much saying the same thing, that they're trying to get a hold of this lady named Jean. So I felt kind of bad. And after about 10 days, I responded to both people and I sent the same message. And I said, "Hello, my apologies, but this is not the number of the person you are trying to reach. I've only had this number a short amount of time, so I'm not sure what happened. I hope you find who you were looking for." And then the one lady, the initial lady, says, "I did thank you for texting me back." Okay. I said, "You're welcome." I didn't know what else to say. And she sends another text immediately saying, "R.I.P. Jean." Did we just kill Jean?
Wow.
Yeah, that was a very quick assumption that Jean is no longer with us.
It sounds like it. So it was a total of 10 days. Maybe she found out in the meantime.
Well, but this is on the same day. Like, her and I are going back and forth. So she's still asking me about her. Well, maybe not. Now that I'm reading it. No, maybe not. Maybe she did. She said, "I did thank you for texting me back." I didn't understand that. It was weird. The whole thing was weird. I was like, okay.
You killed Jean.
I got dead lady number.
We got dead lady number.
Sorry, Jean, but I just found this whole thing a little bit amusing.
R.I.P. Jean.
R.I.P. Jean.
Okay, so this episode, since it is the last one in the
Spookterfest. I beat you to it so you can cut me off.
Blah, 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 blah series, is actually a Halloween episode. So you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Let's do it. This is all on you, sister. I'm just part of the audience.
Oh, no. You need to participate so you can get your award.
Oh, no naps while you're talking?
No.
Darn it.
Even though it's tempting. No. It's Halloween night. Kids are getting ready to go trick-or-treating. Parents are rushing home to ready the evening for the festivities. I don't know what was more traumatizing as a child, having to eat dinner before going trick-or-treating, and then the anxiety that inevitably came when somebody else came to the door to collect their candy while you just had to sit there and eat, or being a parent trying to calm this child, assuring them that there will be candy out there once they're finished with their dinner, and then watching this same child that you can't get to do their homework or clean their room meticulously run from house to house with unheard of organizational skills, gathering those little cavity-inducing treats.
You know, that kid was freaking out because he had to eat dinner and that was taking up candy space.
Space and time.
Yep.
Then let's not forget going back home to check out the haul and wanting to eat it all at once, or convincing your little one that 2 pieces was enough before bedtime. All the way around, it can be a stressful holiday.
Not for the kids, because they snuck some in their pockets, and it's not going to be It's not going to be a 2-piece holiday ever.
That's why they're bouncing off the walls when they're supposed to be sleeping.
I used to tell my kids, we had a weird rule at our house, that whatever they could eat in 3 days was what they could have. They could have it 24 hours, but only for 3 days. And whatever was left went with me to the office. Done deal.
Wow. I don't know if that was brutal or insane.
Well, I figured their chances of getting a cavity in 3 days was less than their chances of just milking that for the next month.
How much candy did your kids collect? Sheesh.
They still eat a lot of candy to this day. It's kind of ridiculous.
They're still trying to eat it in 3 days.
But the 3 days is repeated over and over now.
3 days a week.
That's right. They're making their own dumb choices now.
So this particular Halloween night in 2011 was not filled with fun or merriment for the McGehee family in Manteca, California, but instead turned into a scene out of a scary movie. A 911 call had been placed by Caitlin McGehee to come do a welfare check on her 55-year-old mother, Kathleen McGehee. Police and firefighters arrived at the home. They then had to break into Kathleen's locked bedroom door. Once in Kathleen's room, they found her lying on the floor in a gruesome scene. She was on her back, stab wounds to her neck, abdomen, and chest. Kathleen was dead.
Wow, that's so sad.
Based on the amount of blood surrounding her body, it was immediately determined that this was a murder. But who could have done this?
And this happened on Halloween, you're saying?
Well, I'll get to that.
Okay.
Let me give you some background about Kathleen and her family. Kathleen and her husband Tom met in college. They attended 2 different colleges, but met through a Christian fellowship ministry they attended. Kathleen and Tom hit it off rather quickly and got married. They moved to Chicago, having 2 children, Justin and Colin. Tom McGehee took Greek so he could read the old manuscripts. His dream was to become a minister. However, that was put on hold after the kids were born. After some time, Tom and Kathleen moved their kids back to California's Bay Area. Tom was fluent in 4 different languages and became an international businessman. This was a great job to support his family. However, it also meant he was gone on business trips for what could be a month at a time. He did come home often enough, though, because they had 2 more children, Dawson and Caitlin. Kathleen loved being pregnant and was a stay-at-home mom. She adored her children, devoting all her time nurturing and raising their kids. Homeschooling them, Kathleen became proficient in teaching since her children were in 4 different grades.
It's a lot. 4 kids is a lot.
Tom and Kathleen wanted to purchase a home, but were unable to afford one in the San Francisco area, so they purchased one in the suburbs known as Manteca. Kathleen spent her time teaching and taking care of her children, who were all very intelligent and were also musicians. As the children grew, one of them, Dawson, needed a little more of Kathleen's attention and needed a little more help with his homework. Constantly wanting her attention, whether it be good or bad, he would antagonize his siblings and even made Caitlin cry. After taking Dawson to be tested, he was diagnosed with ADHD, which is Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. At the time, Ritalin was prescribed, but Dawson gravitated towards music, which seemed to calm him down.
And where did Dawson fall in the line of kids?
He was the 3rd.
The 3rd, okay.
As time passed, the 4 kids grew up and moved on to college. This left Kathleen empty-nested, especially since Tom was still traveling for work. She decided to go back to her religious roots and started attending Stockton Church. Kathleen was a very sweet and caring person. She had a passion for taking care of others. She became an avid volunteer and an advocate for victims of abuse programs. They ministered women who had been involved in sexual violence, home or spousal abuse. Reverend Bud Locke had said this about Kathleen, quote, "She would say this is for me to do, and she would learn aggressively, almost obsessively about it, because it wasn't okay to go halfway," end quote. Kathleen had spent years avoiding conflict and did not want to say anything to anyone that would make them angry. That was until she started working as an advocate for victims of abuse programs.
Sounds like it made her a lot stronger.
She had to go through training, which made her more assertive. Kathleen stopped avoiding conflict and would do or say things to people that could make them mad if she felt it needed to be said or done.
Go, Kathleen.
Exactly. Knowing no limitations, Kathleen was also caretaker for 2 family members until they passed. One of them was her brother, who had Parkinson's disease, and the other was her sister. All of her children graduated college and moved on, well, with the exception of one, Dawson. He did graduate from the University of Pacific with a 3.0 GPA and had lots of potential, but only temporarily taught music to elementary students and eventually ended up moving back home with Kathleen and Tom. According to Dawson's sister, Caitlin, Dawson was outgoing, energetic, and sociable in college, but he began to change in 2008. He became very unsocial and unhappy.
Now, are they thinking this is all due to his ADHD?
Because he got so much attention because of his ADHD, I think that it just kind of made him...
Be a little bit codependent?
Yes, I agree, codependent. Numerous patterns of Dawson emerged once back home. First, Dawson became very dependent on Kathleen, letting her take care of him. According to his brother Justin McGehee, quote, "She was doing his laundry, cooking him food. He would leave messes around the house for my mom or both my parents to clean up. He wasn't pulling his weight at all, not even in little ways," end quote. Second, some switch or something went off in Dawson's head, and he believed he was either possessed or seeing demons.
Whoa.
I wonder what switch that was.
Switch it back off. Switch it off.
Kathleen did take him to therapy to try and find out what was wrong with him, but after numerous attempts, therapy was not working. Dawson became withdrawn. He did start self-medicating using marijuana.
Great.
I know. He was hoping this would relieve him of these visions, but it ended up enhancing them. His thoughts and dreams of religious demons and angels grew more frequent and more realistic. To make matters worse, Dawson began obsessing over horror and slasher movies, the more gruesome and gorier the better. He started obtaining a collection of props, masks, and costumes from his favorite films.
Well, we really can't judge him for that now, can we?
Gotta have a hobby.
Right, we're right there with you.
He would wear these things around the house or drive around incognito in one of his masks. Dawson really loved the Halloween movie, so his brother Justin took him to see it. The entire time, Dawson was in character, wearing the hockey-style mask. Yeah, that wouldn't freak me out much.
You think? He's freaking everybody out. Everybody that sees him.
Driving down the street in a mask.
That's insane. I mean, unless it's Halloween, you shouldn't be walking around in the mask.
And I can see in the movie theater that, okay, you're going to be in character. But one of the things that I had seen was that at one point, Dawson got up to go to the restroom and didn't come back. So Justin went looking for him and he was in a completely different seat.
What? Okay.
Mind of his own.
Instead of Dawson's Creek, he's Dawson's Creep. You're welcome. I just made that up. No need for applause.
No worries. No applause will be applied at this moment. While all this was going on, Dawson's siblings were starting to wonder if the obsessions, the horror films, the visions of angels and demons was just another way of trying to grab attention. Justin's thought on this was, quote, "He seems to be carving out a life for himself, where he just gets to be pathetic, pitiful, unstable, unhealthy, whatever person. He'll just be loved and nurtured and taken care of," end quote. Brother definitely had an opinion.
A very strong opinion. And it sounds like he's not wrong, but it also sounds like things have definitely gone sour between him and his brother.
His siblings, Colin, Caitlin, and Justin, saw the pattern that Dawson was developing. And they felt bad for their parents.
Yep. I was just going to say that. At some point when you grow up, you do start to feel bad when you see other people taking advantage of them, even if it's your own siblings.
It was both the parents, but Kathleen specifically.
Right.
Tom, their father, was very frustrated by all of this behavior and the excuses for it by Kathleen. When Kathleen's other children brought it up, she became very defensive of Dawson.
It seems like this is the normal pattern, though, between a husband and wife. The mom gets protective of the kid that's taking advantage, and the dad tries to put up a healthy boundary, and it just never flies.
Yeah. Then in April 2011, police were called to the McGehee home for a domestic disturbance. The altercation was between Dawson and his father, Tom. Dawson claimed that he would not be kicked out of the house without an eviction proceeding.
Wow.
One of the officers informed them that Dawson could, in fact, be kicked out without an eviction order. Kathleen sided with her husband, agreeing that Dawson could be kicked out at any time. After that, Dawson started imitating signs of Parkinson's disease, which he had witnessed from his uncle, the one in which Kathleen had been taken care of.
Oh, okay.
During this time period, Kathleen had become more forceful because of her advocacy training.
Advocacy.
Because of her advocacy training. Advocacy training.
I'm going to advocate for you learning how to say advocacy.
Shut up. This caused arguments and disagreements with Dawson. Caitlin moved back home in September 2011 to plan for her upcoming nuptials. During those months at home, she witnessed Dawson being very disrespectful to her mother regularly. On one occasion, she saw him belittling and berating his mother. If she attempted to speak up for herself, Dawson would just stare her down.
Wow, he's really trying to be intimidating. Now, how old is Dawson at this point? Do you know?
26.
Okay.
As time went on, Kathleen kept busy with her volunteer work and helping Caitlin prepare for her wedding. She began to distance herself from Dawson, which also meant she was not catering to him as much.
Good for her.
On October 30th, 2011, Tom was in China on a business trip, and Kathleen was busy in the kitchen preparing jambalaya for the domestic violence potluck. She had called her son Colin at 4 p.m. to inquire about how to use the rice cooker. I guess he left it at the house and she didn't know how to use it, so she called him and said, "Hey, how do you do this?"
They can be a little bit tricky.
She finished up, cleaned the kitchen, and put the pot in the refrigerator. Kathleen was getting ready to pick up Caitlin. Caitlin had been away for a weekend at a Christian ministry retreat and was heading back on the bus. At 5 p.m., she called her mother to let her know that she would be arriving around 6 p.m. since she was going to pick her up, but there was no answer, so Caitlin left a message. Kathleen went into her bedroom to grab her car keys when all of a sudden she was confronted by a man in a mask wielding a large kitchen knife. He began to attack Kathleen, slashing her with the knife. She tried to fend him off, but unfortunately her attempts didn't work. She was stabbed 10 times in the neck, chest, and abdomen areas. After the autopsy, it was revealed that 8 out of the 10 stab wounds were enough to kill her independently without the need for more. I'd say that's serious anger right there when she was basically killed 8 times.
That's horrific. Wow. No words.
Some serious anger. Caitlin made numerous attempts to call her mother's cell phone and the house phone again, with no answer. Finally, Caitlin's phone rang, but it wasn't Kathleen. It was her brother Dawson. Caitlin, being concerned for her mom, asked Dawson what was going on. She tried the house phone. He said that they were having problems with that phone. She said that she'd also tried mom's cell phone, and Dawson explained that their mom was having troubles with both phones. He went on to tell Caitlin that their mother wasn't feeling well and went to bed, but she had mentioned that she needed to pick up Caitlin. Dawson said that he had some errands to run and that he would pick her up while he was out. When is it that you have 2 phones, a house landline and a cell phone not working?
Unless there's a national disaster, I don't think that can really happen. Not reasonably.
No, made no sense to me.
None.
After picking Caitlin up at about 6:30, they went and ran Dawson's errands, one of which was going out of town to get his marijuana. While out, they stopped at a fast food place and grabbed some dinner. Caitlin recalled the conversation with Dawson was nice, funny, which was unusual. A half-an-hour ride home turned into a 4-hour trek with still no word from Kathleen. It was about 11 p.m. by the time they finally got home. Dawson had gotten a little belligerent, telling Caitlin to be quiet because Mom was asleep. Needless to say, Caitlin was a little annoyed with his attitude and him stating the obvious.
I hate when people state the obvious. It's a pet peeve. It drives me crazy because it's like someone thinks I'm stupid.
They're just looking out for you.
No, they're not.
I'm just looking out for you.
Yeah, I'm not going to mention any names, but it makes me crazy.
Isn't that my job?
Yours and my husband's, apparently.
The next morning, October 31st, Caitlin came out of her room. Dawson was standing there asking if she'd received the text that he sent. He told her that he spoke with Mom between 5 and 6 a.m., that she was still not feeling well, and that she was going to sleep in. And according to Dawson, he said Kathleen had asked him to drive Caitlin around so she could take care of a few things she needed to. They spent the morning running errands, then Caitlin met a friend for lunch. When she returned home, Dawson was nowhere to be found, so Caitlin went in to check on her mother. She knocked on the door with no response, then tried to open the door to find out it was locked. She knocked harder without hearing anything coming from her mother's room. She was getting a little panicky, so Caitlin went outside to look in through the window only to see the blinds drawn. She went back into the house and called her brother Justin. He told her to hang up and immediately call 911 and that he was on his way over. Caitlin called 911 and said, quote, "Hi, my mother has been in her room with the door locked. She's not responding when I knock on the door, and she's diabetic and prone to sleep apnea. I'm just worried something is wrong with her." End quote. While waiting for first responders, Caitlin tried to call her brother Dawson to see where he was and if he knew what had happened. Dawson didn't answer. Justin arrived at his family's home to the sight of lights and emergency vehicles all around. Once inside Kathleen's bedroom, it was described as a scene straight out of a horror movie. Quote, "There's not too many things that surprise you after you have been on the job for a while, but every once in a while something like this comes along," end quote, stated Jason Hensley, former Manteca police officer. This was a very violent death.
How sad.
Bennett Amalu, San Joaquin County Chief Medical Examiner, stated, quote, "She had sustained a multitude of stab wounds, a constellation of stab wounds that would be consistent with what we have traditionally called an overkill," end quote. He continues, quote, "The blunt force traumas indicated that she had been beaten up, knocked out while she was fighting to the best of her ability. Once she fell, her attacker had been relentless, enraged even," end quote.
Oh my God, that just breaks my heart.
You always hear those crimes of passion, and this is definitely what it seems to be.
Yeah, it just makes you wonder why he's so passionate about it. She was so good to him.
Again, what's going on in someone's head?
Yeah.
No trace of the killer was left behind. There were no signs of robbery. Nothing was disturbed, and Kathleen's bedroom was left nice and tidy. While searching the house, police officers went into Dawson's room. Much to their surprise, and not because it was dirty, they were shocked by the movie paraphernalia collection. Detective Wayne Miller, Manteca Police, said, "We found in his bedroom multiple masks, like hockey-style masks, like Jason would wear in the Friday the 13th movies, coveralls like Michael Myers wore in the Halloween movies." He followed this with, "There was a journal that was discovered that gave a lot of insight into his mind and the way he was thinking. There were some very unusual religious sort of connotations and phrases and just statements by him that had religious undertones." While trying to find out what happened and when this happened, Caitlin was questioned at the police station. She explained that she had just moved back home to prepare for her wedding, that she had been away for the weekend, and the interactions she had had with her brother Dawson. The more information that began to surface, the more the family was in disbelief. Could 26-year-old Dawson McGehee have had something to do with their mother's murder? Justin McGehee believed that his deeply troubled brother Dawson did. There was a growing concern that a killer was on the streets, the same streets that were filled with families and children trick-or-treating. There could be a person mixed in with all the costumed Halloween goers looking for their next victim. I would definitely say that the thoughts of vulnerable people, so easily accessible, did come across authorities' minds.
I always think about that just because I'm creepy. Like anybody could be dressed in a costume that night and do whatever they want. And who's going to question them? They're in a costume.
Who's going to know who it is?
Right. Or, people just think, oh, they're just acting like they're killing somebody. Nope, they're really doing it.
Wow. That went from trick-or-treaters to, yep, nope, they did it.
I think about these things.
A be on the lookout alert was issued for Dawson McGehee, and a little after midnight, Dawson's car was spotted. The officers followed the car and waited for backup since this was considered a high-risk traffic stop.
You think?
Officers pulled Dawson over and requested he stick his hands out of the car, then asked him to get out. He was extremely cooperative, then placed in handcuffs and put in the back of a patrol car. This Halloween night had been something out of a movie, and the police felt the search was over. At the police station, they put Dawson in an interview room, and while talking to Detective Wayne Miller, Dawson began to fidget, moving his hands around, tilting his head sideways, and exhibiting a partial stutter, almost like he had Parkinson's symptoms. Not realizing there was a camera in the interview room, once the police officer had left, his symptoms seemed to disappear until the officer returned.
What a jerk. Such a jerk.
The interview went like this. Detective Miller, we want to talk to you about what happened to your mom. Dawson, what happened to my mom? Miller, well, you tell me. Dawson, people called me and said something happened at home to my mom. They are very, very, very vague about what happened to...
Sorry. Can you repeat that?
Okay. Can I say it without you laughing?
Go for it.
They were very, very, very vague about what happened to my mom. He did this. I saw he did this.
I know. I'm just laughing because you're imitating him so well.
As the interview continues, Dawson says, okay, you can't laugh. Dawson says, you're supposed to have an attorney. I want to ask for an attorney. Miller, you want to ask for an attorney? Dawson, yeah.
Is that all, folks? You knew that was coming.
You're so evil.
Well, no, I'm not evil because he's a faker. So I'm not evil. He's evil.
Okay, well, we will find out if he's a faker.
If he was not a faker, I would not be laughing about it, even though it'd still be a little bit funny.
Did I not tell you people she's a little on the demented side? Well, if I didn't say it before, she's a little on the demented side.
But I wouldn't laugh about it if it was real.
Okay. First of all, it comes into question that if he does have some type of disease that makes him move like that and actually tilt his head like he's looking up, how is he driving? They didn't pull him over for reckless driving. He didn't appear to have these symptoms when he was pulled over. The other thing is, I'm sure they didn't show the entire interview and Dawson was told what happened to his mother. Wouldn't he be visibly upset instead of asking for an attorney? To me, that's a big guilt red flag.
Definitely a big red flag.
When Dawson was brought into the police station, he was asked to remove his clothes. He was wearing a leather jacket and these weird striped pants, which I'll give that one to him because it was Halloween.
Okay.
They looked over the jacket and saw what appeared to be blood stains. So based on the jacket, what Caitlin told the police that Dawson deliberately misled her about their mother's well-being and illness, and the fact that Dawson was the only one at the home with Kathleen at the time of her death, Dawson was placed under arrest for the murder of his mother.
So sad. This poor family.
The trial began on November 6, 2012. And by that time, the evidence looked even stronger. Dawson's clothes were sent to the Department of Justice to be analyzed, and it was found that the blood stains on the leather jacket sleeve did in fact belong to Kathleen McGehee. The prosecutor opened with the forensic evidence of the blood stains, and with no reasonable explanation as to why they would be there, and about his obsession with violent horror movies. That this murder was planned, cold, and calculated. Prosecutor Sherry Adams said, quote, Caitlin was going out of town. He knew it was going to be Halloween. He knew his father was out of town. In my opinion, I believe that he planned it, that he wanted to provoke a fight, that he wanted to do this, that he planned it for some time, end quote.
probably not wrong.
The defense attorney, Katie Jacott, entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. Philip Trumpeter, Ph.D., clinical psychologist, explained insanity as, the definition of insanity in California is that you either don't understand the nature and consequences of your actions, or you don't know what you're doing is wrong. What I found interesting is he was specific about California. Is there different definitions of insanity in different states?
That's weird. But I thought the definition of insanity was doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. That's what I've always heard. So
No.
This is new to me.
I think this is probably the legal definition, maybe.
I've never
I'm
looked.
assuming, but it just seems like not legal, the clinical explanation.
I've never looked it up because I already knew that, or so I thought.
Well, you know what? Philip Trumpeter just educated you.
Well, I'm going to look it up again and again and again until they change it.
You act like that you'd have to do that for people to believe you're insane. We already know better. Based on that definition, prosecutor Sherry Adams said, lying about his mother saying, "Oh, I'm not feeling good. I'm going to sleep the rest of the day. You know, these are clearly signs of consciousness of guilt." Because there was an insanity plea, the trial would start off with one phase, and if found guilty, it would go into a second phase. The first phase is guilt or innocence. Did he commit the crime? The second phase is if he is found guilty, is he sane or insane? Katie Jacott, attorney for Dawson McGehee, said during the first phase, they didn't have the murder weapon. They didn't have anything like that. They didn't have a confession, anything along those lines. So on a different note, to be a defense attorney, especially in a murder case, I don't think I could do it.
I couldn't do it.
That takes a special kind of person to do that, especially if I knew my client was guilty.
Well, even if you just suspected they were guilty, I know everyone's entitled to their due process, but that's a tough job.
It is a tough job. Sherry Adams, the prosecutor, believed that with the evidence they had, it would be a slam dunk and was pushing for first-degree murder. When the case was turned over to the jury, they struggled with their clarification of the evidence, and it took them several days to deliberate. Ultimately, on November 29, 2012, they reached a verdict of second-degree murder. Justin McGehee, Dawson's brother, said of the verdict, quote, "I'd hope for first-degree murder, but it's still more understandable for someone to do something in a rage than someone planning all of this out, and there's a charitable benefit of the doubt." End quote. Justin had said during one of his interviews that he didn't believe his brother was violent. Before this, he didn't believe his brother was violent, and he was okay with his kids being around him. I definitely think he's changed his mind on that.
But it sounds like maybe Dawson just snapped. I mean, it's hard to say whether he planned it or not, but it doesn't sound like he's been all there for a minute. So this was probably just a matter of time.
And I think watching all of those movies over and over and over again, if, like you said, something had snapped in your head, that may seem like a fantasy.
Right. And well, those guys have all the control. They do whatever they want. They kill whoever they want. Maybe for someone like him, not truly understanding that killing is forever.
It's just a movie, and then they'll be in something else.
Right. This is not a movie.
Quote, "They think it's too difficult for a jury of 12 people to think that a family member would really take the time to plan and deliberate and premeditate to do this type of gruesome killing." End quote. An opinion of Sherry Adams. Now that the first phase is done, the second phase of whether he is sane or insane needs to be considered. This would determine if he goes to prison or a mental institution to serve his sentence. The same jury now needs to take part in basically another trial. I don't know if I could do that. That's a lot for the jury. Have you ever been in a jury?
I have.
And was it a murder trial?
No, a guy stabbed his girlfriend. And she was
attempted murder.
I guess it wasn't like a deep stab, but they were in a fight and he pulled something out and stabbed her. And she was in the audience defending him.
Of course. You just feel sad for them.
It was so sad. And it was just like some little thing gone wrong. And he just decided, I'll just stab you. That'll resolve everything.
I was on one once, and I was juror number 14, which made me an alternate.
Right.
And you have to sit through the entire thing just in case two people drop out, not even one, just in case two people drop out. And it was about basically a contract thing. Some guy was stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I didn't even get to weigh in at the end. I'm like, man.
You know you and your opinions. I'm sure that drove you crazy.
And I had to have him call me and tell me if they found him guilty.
To make friends so they'd call you.
I have a whole picture of everybody in the elevator. All of the jurors in the elevator. It was funny.
I was the juror, I don't remember my number, who was mad because one of the alternates fell asleep during the case and they excused that person from the court. And I was sitting there thinking, dang it, why didn't I fall asleep? I want out. This lasted only 6 days, but I was missing work and I was not happy about it.
You fall asleep everywhere else.
I know. I was like, dang it, but that excuse is already taken. Somebody already used it.
So this was interesting. There were court-appointed psychologists and psychologists that were obtained by the prosecutor and the defense for the trial, a total of 2 for each side. One of the psychologists said that after the evaluation of Dawson, that he did not have a psychological disorder. On the flip side, another psychologist said that he suffered from schizophrenia. I had to look up the definitions of schizophrenia.
Mm-hmm.
The symptoms of schizophrenia are usually classified into positive symptoms, any change in behavior or thoughts, such as hallucinations or delusions. Negative symptoms, where people appear to withdraw from the world around them, take no interest in everyday social interactions, and often appear emotionless and flat. Remember that for later. Just saying, remember that for later.
I think I've seen you negative and positive.
And that's just today.
We're going to have to start shock therapy.
So basically, as it turned out, 2 psychologists said he was sane, and 2 said he was insane. Can you guess which side they each were on?
And 4 received a nice little paycheck. Ridiculous.
Prior to the murder, Dawson received help from a few psychologists. One of them was Dr. John Yarborough. During the appointment, Dawson seemed noticeably agitated, and when difficult or uncomfortable things were brought up, he began to move and squirm. He showed signs of difficulty breathing and became hard to talk to. Dr. Yarborough diagnosed Dawson with PTSD and conversion disorder. He increased the medication he was already on and prescribed him anti-anxiety medication. A few weeks later, his symptoms had decreased, but were still there. An interesting note that Dr. Yarborough made was that Dawson did not complain of auditory or visual hallucinations at any appointment.
I'm curious about the PTSD. What did he have PTSD from?
It didn't say. It just said that's what he had diagnosed him with. I don't know.
Interesting, because I mean, we don't know all the details, but it sounds like he was living quite the cushy little life at home with Mama taking care of him.
Well, maybe when his mom stopped taking care of him, it caused him trauma.
Let's go with that.
Since Dawson's diagnosis was, for lack of a better word, tied, a 5th psychologist was assigned by the court. That was not either for or against the prosecution or defense to do an impartial evaluation. Philip Trumpeter, Ph.D. clinical psychologist, examined Dawson and said, quote, "During my interview with Mr. McGehee, he was essentially focusing a great deal on all these symptoms he said that he had, including hearing voices that morning. He expressed a number of peculiar ideas which are sometimes seen with mentally ill people. There was one catch, however. Most often, mentally ill people don't parade their symptoms in front of you." End quote. His conclusion was that Dawson was faking it.
I like this guy.
Justin McGehee stated, quote, "He was faking it. He had a lot of time to build up this whole I'm mentally unstable, oh, I killed my mom because I'm crazy thing." End quote. Tom McGehee, Dawson's father, described him as a predator, someone who lied a lot and was manipulative.
Wow. That sounds harsh, but I'm sure that was really hard for his dad to recognize that and actually say it out loud.
Well, they'd been living with him like that for a very long time.
I know, but it's a parent's instinct to want to protect your kid. So for him to put that out there, I'm sure that was really hard on his dad. I feel bad for him.
And I'm sure you're right. I'm sure it was. But again, he did kill his mother and Tom's wife. So
No, I get that part. And of course, that's why he actually had to admit that there was a problem. But as a parent, that's rough.
It is. During both phases of the trial, Dawson did not show any signs that he had exhibited during the interrogation. He was emotionless and stone-faced, even with all the evidence being shown, including crime scene photos. Remember the schizophrenic description? Hallucinations, delusions, not social, emotionless, and flat. In my opinion, it just seemed that he adjusted his symptoms based on what was going on at the time, and to be honest, which was easier at the time. We've talked about this before about mental health, and it is as important as physical health and should be taken care of as such. But I would have to agree with Tom that he was a liar and manipulative.
Obviously, and he's actually working against the people who are actually sick, because people go in there and fake it and take up resources, and then, the next person comes in who really has a problem, and they're also seen as maybe faking it if they display the same symptoms or act the same way. It's just sad all the way around. He's very selfish, and he is very manipulative.
That whole taking up resources angers me.
I know, me too.
Because there are a lot of people that do have mental health, and they could be everyday people that just maybe need to go to therapy. I'm pro-therapy. December 2012, Dawson McGehee had already been found guilty in the first phase of his trial, but it is now up to the jury to decide whether or not he goes to prison or mental institution. He was found to be sane. Justin McGehee said the jury took a matter of minutes to find him sane.
Wow, that's crazy.
Dawson McGehee will be serving his time in prison. He was sentenced to 16 years to life. 15 years to life was for the second-degree murder. The additional year was an enhancement for the use of a knife. He is in Mule Creek State Prison, Ione, California, and will be eligible for parole in 2028. I know we'll never know, but I do wonder if this was a fantasy of his based on his Halloween obsession. Was he in need of that much attention that he killed his mother because she wasn't providing as much attention as he wanted? I guess it's one of those things that we honestly will never know.
And did he ever give a statement about why he did it?
No.
Or is he continuing to deny that he did it?
As far as I know, actually never denied that he did it.
Oh, that's right. He was working the insanity defense.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. But he never spoke about it.
Not that I know of. I mean, he may have, but I did not see anything of it.
Crazy. How sad. So tragic. That is really tragic.
The parent-child, child-parent murders.
It's called matricide when you kill your mom.
Is it? Wow.
Mm-hmm. And when you kill your dad, it's called patricide.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yep.
Well, thank you for that little tidbit.
Sometimes I know stuff.
Not always, but sometimes.
Now I'm going to have to look it up and make sure I'm right.
So we know what this means. Yay, it's the end of October. No more Oxbookter.
You mean Oxbookterfest. Boo! I say we roll it right into November with Dia de los Muertos. Woohoo!
Yeah, no, you can just keep your roll way over there. We want to wish everyone a happy Halloween. Stay safe and be aware of your surroundings, specifically any hockey mask wearing, chainsaw carrying, or pizza-faced individuals you may see.
Or anybody else that just looks kind of creepy.
I'm staying home.
I should be out of this room right now. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate your time. Take care, have fun, and let your imaginations run wild.
Bye.
We just want to thank you all for sharing your time with us. And if you'd like to send in your creepy little grim bits, we would love to hear your personal stories, interests, and suggestions. Please email them to grimwitwithdimwits@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @grimwitwithdimwits, Twitter @grimwitwithdimwits, and Facebook, Grimwit with Dimwits. Join us every Monday for new episodes, and feel free to share us with your grim-loving friends.
We would really appreciate if you would take a minute to rate and review. 5-star ratings go a long way and would really help us out. Until then, we would love it if you'd come back next week to delve with us into the strange and unusual things we just can't wrap our skulls around.